In the political turmoil we are experiencing in South Africa, loaded questions are often used. Hypothetically speaking, a question like this could and probably has been asked. Do you think the liberal mainstream capitalist media are spreading lies about our struggle icon allegedly stealing money? Should one answer yes, it means that the mainstream media in South Africa are controlled by a mafia with a hidden agenda, and that the person vilified is actually a struggle icon who has now become the victim of conspiracies. Should you answer no, it means you are actually part of the conspiracy. So no matter how you answer the question, you lose. We may not be aware of this, but this type of question often comes to us, or we use it ourselves. Think about it. You want to buy a new television and you plan to shop around and to compare the prices. At the very first store, a very friendly salesperson assists you. She demonstrates to you the state-of-the-art smart television, and she answers all your queries. And then she says, will it be cash or credit card? Now the question implies that you have already made up your mind, and you are not going to make any further inquiries. If you fall for this, they will then send you a questionnaire to give feedback. It may contain another loaded question. How do you rate our amazing salesperson? I tried this approach with my eldest daughter at bedtime when she was a toddler. Christine, won't you be a good girl and go to bed? However, she thought about it for a while and she replied, Daddy, I am a good girl, and no, I don't want to go to bed. And she cured me permanently from using loaded questions as an educational tool. And now and again, of course, I would meet up with one of my ex-students, and I will always ask them a loaded question like this: do you still drink so much? Continuing the bantering, they would reply, not as often as I used to. The Sadducees regarded themselves as the bastion of tradition, the guardians of the past in Jewish society. And this religious party, or sect if you want to, were made up of upper class families who were wealthy and who was in control of what we nowadays call old money. Their duties were to maintain the temple in Jerusalem and to collect temple taxes from Jews living abroad and at home. And this tradition protected their privileges. This is why they were against Jesus, who preached a message of social change. Traditionally, Jews believed that there was no life after death. If you read the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, you will find no mention of a resurrection or an afterlife. The Sadducees placed much emphasis on these books. In fact, these books were their Bible, and they did not like new ideas. However, around the 2nd century before our common era, the Pharisees, another religious party, started to believe in the resurrection of the body. And they did this because some pious Jews were tortured and executed by their enemies. They died unjustly, and the Pharisees argued that their mutilated bodies would be resurrected without blemish in the afterlife. And the Sadducees opposed them. They said that the notion of a soul came from the Greeks, who were pagan, and it was therefore a heretical belief, and it should not form part of Jewish theology. To undermine Jesus' standing with the poor and the downtrodden, they decided to undermine the reputation of Jesus. And this is how Luke tells the story in chapter 20, verses 27 to 38. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother." Now there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and so in the same way all 7 died childless. Finally the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will this woman be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, "Those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abram, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive." So first you can see that the Sadducees painted a hypothetical scenario, which I would like to call one bride for 7 brothers. A man had 6 brothers. He died without any children, and according to the Torah, one of his other brothers had to make the widow his wife so that she could give birth to a son. And this son would then be regarded as the deceased's heir. So she got married to the second brother. Unfortunately, he also died before a child could be produced, and this pattern repeated itself with the rest of the brothers, and finally she died as well. And now came the loaded question. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will this woman be? Suppose Jesus would have selected option A. She is wife of brother number 1, the first one to marry her, or she is the wife of brother number 7, the last one she had. Then the Sadducees would have won the argument, because their next question would have been, but why not the wife of number 2 or number 4? Wasn't she equally the wife of each brother? The gun would have been discharged, and Jesus argued into a corner. Therefore, if A does not work, they expected Jesus to go for option B. Sorry, gentlemen, you've got me. A woman cannot simultaneously be the wife of brothers number 1 to 7. Therefore, I have to concede that the resurrection of dead people does not make any sense. It is an absurdity. What the Sadducees hoped to achieve was what is called a reductio ad absurdum victory. It is like when my eldest son one day decided to bunk school. I asked him, "Why did you do it?" He answered, "Well, all my friends were doing it." So I reduced him to ashes with my reply, which I got from my father, and he from his father, going back I don't know how many generations. "If I jump in the fire, would you do it too?" Do you know this argument? You've heard it too. And this is what the Sadducees were hoping for, that Jesus would realize the absurdity that a woman cannot belong to more than one husband, therefore there cannot be any afterlife. However, Jesus does not fall into the trap of making such a quick and easy choice between the two options. He attacks the underlying assumption. He takes the bullet out of the loaded gun, and you see the question is based upon the hidden premise that in the future kingdom of God, women would continue to be the possessions of men. Do you see, if you remove this perspective from the argument, the question goes flat. It loses its explosive power. The question itself is the problem. So Jesus argues something like this. In this life, women are regarded as men's possessions. In the life to come, as persons in their own right. Now we have distinctions between Jews and Greeks, black and white, male and female, gay and straight, Christians and Muslims. Then they will fall away. So Jesus attacks the premise that heaven is a continuation of earth, just in the superlative. And Jesus also supplies a counter argument from the Bible of the Sadducees. He quotes Exodus 3:15, where God refers to God's self as the Lord, the God of their forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And according to Jesus' perspective, their forefathers are still alive. So what Jesus is really doing is to tell the Sadducees that it is really absurd to cling to the past and to outdated theologies. Things have to change. We cannot continue as always. Will the afterlife then be more of the same, only in the superlative? Mark Twain was more ambiguous. He said, "If I had to choose, then it would be heaven for climate and hell for company." Meaning that the fun people won't be found in heaven, but that the temperature in heaven would be more tolerable. For me, it is enough to know that when we die, we return to our origins. More important in the time we live in is what effects do our future expectations have on how we live? And I don't think that the afterlife was ever meant to be a pie in the sky when we die. It was meant to whet our appetite for the future kingdom of God. So if we expect women not to be men's possessions in the afterlife, they should be treated equally in this life. If we believe with Paul in Romans 8 that the whole created universe in all its parts groans, we should try to live eco-friendly lives. Christians are like children days before Christmas. They are so impatient that they start looking through the little gaps and spaces in the gift wrapping to see what is inside. And similarly, we have glimpses of the afterlife, but we are trying to have something of these blessings in the here and the now. And therefore, perhaps I think questions like the following are more fruitful. How can we prevent violence against women and children? How can we alleviate the suffering of the hungry? How can we restore someone in despair to new life? How can we rejoice with those who are happy and mourn with those who are grieving? How can we address the overpopulation of this earth? How can we lessen our carbon footprint? How can we assist to reintegrate the marginalized in society? And when we ask these questions, we will receive different and relevant answers. Perhaps start by raising your sons and your daughters as equals, or walk over to your neighbors where the mother is sick, take them some meals. And so we have to listen carefully to the questions coming to us, whether it be in politics, or whether as part of sales pitches, or when raising children. My eldest son again, Jan, when he was a small child, he saw a news report on TV. It was a baby whose parents had abandoned it. And then he asked me, "Dad, in Soweto, how many parents leave their children every day?" I was impressed with his curiosity, and I said, "I don't know, but I would try to find out." And he continued, "Yes, Dad, and how many in Johannesburg and in South Africa and in the whole world?" It was then that I realized that it was a loaded question. He was not interested in statistics. He was afraid that his mom and I would become so disillusioned with his pranks that we would abandon him. All he needed was a big hug and the assurance, "We love you very much. You mean so much to us. We will never, ever leave you." So like Jesus, in the words of Rainer Maria Rilke, let us live the questions now. Perhaps then someday in the far future, we will live our ways into the answer, although we don't have the clear answers right now. Amen. this woman and her daughter, they were both alcoholics.
Okay, and they lived here now. I haven't watched that album. I haven't watched it.
Now we're with her. Okay, Ella Joan, huge girl. She's Ella Joan. She's just especially really
That's it.
I want to come to see you. Stay away from the police.
Get contaminated.